Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we are doing some Star Wars Armada builds. We're doing two 800-point thematic builds, and this was actually a Patreon requested video to talk a little bit about some thematic lists that could be playable at 800 points, and I decided to take a little bit of an alternate reality type of build as if the Battle of Endor were under different circumstances, if Thrawn was in command. And so we're going to be doing Ryan Kingston's Fleet Builder video, and of course here is the part of the build. I'm going to be doing a Rebel build also, so the first half of this video is going to be the Imperial build, and the second half will be the Rebel build. And I already have these builds done, so instead of actually adding the cards one at a time, I'll just talk to you because there's a lot more to get into. Also, if you guys are new here, we are still doing that big giveaway for that $70 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos if you want to enter to win that. So definitely check that out. Check the links in the description below. Like the video, share the video, all that good stuff. All right, the inspiration for this video, again, it was a Patreon requested list build type video. So, if you guys are interested in Patreon as well, it's a great way to support the channel, and I definitely appreciate it. The links for that are in the description below. Plus, you get some Discord, you get a special Discord role, and there's lots of additional patron stuff which you can check out down there. But I don't want to plug the site and all that other stuff anymore. So let's go ahead and get into the build. So I was inspired by initial thoughts when reading the original Grand Admiral Thrawn trilogy. Captain Paleon was saying stuff along the lines of, well, if Thrawn had been there, we'd have won the Battle of Endor and stuff like that. And so I'm like, well, what if Thrawn was there? And so I decided to put Thrawn on a fleet that may have been at the Battle of Endor. And, kind of do a little bit partially thematic, not 100% thematic, but partially thematic. And so I have Thrawn on board an ISD-2 here. And again, these are 800-point lists, so this is for a big game. It's going to take a while. One of the things you'll notice right down below is I do have a Kuat that does not have very many upgrades on it. And while 800 points can be a lot, it also tempts you to put lots of upgrades on all of your ships. So I'm going to actually have a fair number of ships that have very, very few upgrades on them. And that, I think, is an important aspect when you're doing really big builds, because then you're going to end up forgetting some of your upgrades. So while my flagship has a lot of upgrades on it, and hopefully you can at least remember to pay attention to your upgrades on mostly just one ship, most of the other ships are going to be lightly built. Okay, so Thrawn is here. Now, this is going to have a lot of squadrons. The Battle of Endor did have a lot of squadrons, and my thought here is that Thrawn can have some squadron commands. This way, everybody gets to do squadron stuff, and I don't have to worry about my ships actually issuing squadron commands. I can kind of wait until those key turns, and I can do the Thrawn commands early, and then maybe later on I actually have a squadron command planned up, maybe for like turn 5 or 6. But we're gonna try to plan for Thrawn to be mostly squadron commands. This way, also, we don't have to worry about somebody kind of blocking out our squadron capabilities. So we're gonna have this ISD-2 fully kitted out. We have Chimera on there. Of course, that does give us all of the fleet commands. So we start with Intensify Firepower. We've got Linked Turbo Laser Towers, just a really good all-around upgrade. It's going to help us with Salvo, which we're getting from local fire control. We also are going to have Flak Guns, which are going to help our Salvo and our anti-squadron attacks to be a little bit more consistent while at closer range. Point Defense Ion Cannons to help us against enemy squadrons, because there probably will be, again, if you're playing at 800 points, you have the capability for twice as many squadrons as you would in a 400-point game. So I wanted to have some squadron defense. And of course, we have our ship defense with electronic countermeasures. So a lot of standard ISD-2 stuff. This is overall a fairly standard ISD-2 build. But it's very, very strong, tanky, packs quite a punch, and also provides support to the rest of the fleet, and hopefully can keep Thrawn alive, and has a nice salvo. We probably would swap out the contain for a salvo when we do our local fire control at the beginning. Moving down, we have another Star Destroyer. Again, we gotta have multiple Star Destroyers if we're doing a big build, and we want it to look a little bit. Now, this wouldn't obviously be the entire Battle of Endor. I don't have a Super Star Destroyer in this build. That certainly is an option, but I didn't Didn't want this to be the entire thing. This would be like Thrawn swooping in with some of his 7th Fleet, even though I didn't use the 7th Fleet title here, right? So I have a Kuat, and the only thing that's going to be on here is assault concussion missiles and ordnance experts, and I do have a reinforced blast doors to in case it does take some damage while it's moving to get into close range, maybe it can survive. And that's it for the Kuat. Not very much. We could have done a lot more, but that's okay. We know there were interdictors at the Battle of Endor. However, at least one, but they're kind of off screen. But that's how they prevented the rebel fleet from escaping. And so I decided to put an interdictor here. And now I could have put a lot more on this interdictor, but I did not. This interdictor has just got targeting scramblers, grab, shift, reroute, and the interdictor title. Of course, the interdictor will help keep ships, surviving dice at close range, can help keep the Kuat alive, and also can adjust the battlefield at the beginning to make objectives a little bit more in our favor, put obstacles in favorable positions, etc. Now, since in Battlefront 2 we do know that that Inferno Squad was at the Battle of Endor, I decided to go ahead and basically say that the Corvus is here, getting ready to drop Iden Versio on the surface, either before or after we see her in Battlefront 2. But I decided to take some liberties, put the Corvus here. Now, I will say, having run a Corvus in a really big Battle of Endor type build like years ago, the Corvus is not the best title for an 800-point game or a really, really large game. The Corvus excels in the standard 400-point format. In larger games, in this game, it's just there for thematics. Now, 800 points isn't that obscene of a point total, but Corvus is going to just kind of give us a little bit of a stall for deployment and maybe a slight reconfiguration. But Iden Versio is going to help out with the survivability. And I decided to do this Raider 2 with the Overload Pulse kind of shtick, which means at long range it can do a concentrate fire token, pop gunnery teams, disposable capacitors at long range, hit up to 2 targets, and hopefully we get multiple blue crits with Overload Pulse, draining opponents' shield or defense tokens, rather, flipping them all over. So this way, when we come over to attack with the rest of the fleet, those defense tokens will be all amber and ready to go. We have a couple of Architans. The Architans were definitely a mainstay. Now, we don't see those at the Battle of Endor. So this is part of the liberties that I'm taking. I'm kind of leaning a little bit. I'm borrowing a little bit from Star Wars Rebels, where Architans were a lot more common in Imperial fleets. And so was Grand Admiral Thrawn. So I figure, why not? Of course, they would have a couple of Architans. And so I have 2 Architans here with quad battery turrets. They were kind of going to go a little bit slower. Hopefully, the rebel fleets trying to outflank and do their thing. And there we go. And of course, if people go slow and they stay going slow, then we have the advantage of nice long-range firepower, and maybe they won't outrun the Kuat, and things like that. So, I always like quad battery turrets. If you want to stay slow, that's fine with me. I'd love to just take advantage of you from a distance. And we will have a Gozanti to feed tokens. The comms net here is going to help push tokens over to the Chimera, so the Chimera can keep popping Intensify Firepower or whatever else it needs. Of course, that's going to be mostly feeding tokens to the Chimera, but it can feed tokens wherever else is needed. And then we have Hondo Anaka on there. Again, I did say I was taking a few liberties, leaning a little bit into Star Wars Rebels. Hondo is, he works for everybody. He certainly can go on this ship. And the thematic fun thing is he kind of stowed away on board this ship, and he's actually planning on stealing this Gozanti. So as soon as the battle is over, he's going to hit the hyperspace and take this back for himself. This is like his new ship. He's convinced that it's his new ship, and he just needs to fake the funk to not draw suspicion to him during this battle. But little does he know that Grand Admiral Thrawn already knows that he's on there, already knows the plan, is actually planning on letting him escape because there's a homing beacon attached to this Gozanti, and Grand Admiral Thrawn is going to then find out all the other ships that Hondo has stolen, and and so on and so forth. And so it's a very, very interesting battle of wits between those two. Now we're going to go down to our squadrons, and the squadrons is going to be interesting. We have scrolling down here, we have kind of thematic stuff, mostly stuff that we've seen at the Battle of Endor with a few liberties. I do have a High Defender in here. Since Grand Admiral Thrawn is present, he would want to at least use this as a great opportunity to test out a single TIE Defender, maybe a prototype TIE Defender, maybe one that he has fine-tuned a little bit personally himself and putting his favorite pilot, Merrick Steele, on board. Merrick Steele happened to just be an incredibly awesome pilot anyway. And since, of course, during Return of the Jedi, we see plenty of Lambda shuttles, I decided to put Colonel Jendon out there. It's just a single Lambda shuttle. Of course, Jendon happens to just work really good with Merrick Steele, so I figured that that's actually just a good mechanic thing to have in just about any Imperial build. As for the rest, we do have Howl Runner and 6 TIE Fighters, and we have Soontir Fel and 4 TIE Interceptors. This does give us an even number of squadrons. We're looking at 14 squadrons total. That's 167 points. Of course, we can exceed the normal 134 since we are at an 800 point limit, but I'm not going completely crazy because I don't want this to be a 12-hour game, although I do want a heavy squadron presence. And of course, with Thrawn, who can potentially give us a couple of extra squadron dials, this is just a great opportunity to just launch these guys whenever we want. And of course, all of these ships will be able to launch squadrons. We won't have quite as many from the Gazantes and the Architans and stuff, but we'll be able to have some from the Interdictor, from the Kuat, and from, of course, the ISD-2. And maybe we'll lose a couple, and by the time we need to pop the Thrawn stuff, it's no problem because we'll probably lose a couple of TIE Fighters. It's not really that big of an issue, but the more important thing is that we get Merrick Steele doing his damage. Like the Howl Runner and the TIE Fighters are going to be, and the Interceptors, they're just going to be clearing out all the enemy squadrons and making sure that Merrick Steele and Colonel Jendon can just get and whatever ties kind of remain after enemy squadron presence is defeated, that these guys can just start weighing laced or laying waste. I think that's the correct word. Laying waste to enemy ships, and that's the build. It's not too much, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's only 7 ships. You can fit 7 ships in a 400-point build. So it hopefully wouldn't take that long, but it should give you a more of a build that feels like you have an armada, right? Or at least like a full fleet, as opposed to just a little battle group. And I think it's pretty thematic if Thrawn were in command of an Imperial armada at the Battle of Endor, or at least one section of it. Jumping over to the Rebel side, I decided to go a little bit more thematic with Admiral Ackbar. I've taken a few liberties with this one as well, but not too many. This one, we are kind of light on our flagship, but we're a little bit heavy on one of the other MC-80s. So I definitely wanted a selection of these ships that you would see at the Battle of Endor. So starting with, of course, the Home 1 on board an MC-80 command cruiser. Of course, we have Admiral Ackbar there and electronic countermeasures to help keep that ship alive, and that is all we're putting there. This is more of a ship that needs to stay alive, and ECM will help it do that. And of course, it still will have firepower, but it's just not going to have a whole lot of rerolls baked into it. We could easily fit some more, but I decided I wanted another MC-80. This is where theme is a little bit more important. You do see a lot of MC-80 Home 1 stuff, a lot of MC-80Hs at the Battle of Endor, so I wanted to have more than one. I didn't want it to be just one MC-80, so I figured I'd put an assault cruiser as our other one, and this is one I put a lot of upgrades on, and that's the Defiance here. My thought process is this should, first off, Ackbar is really good in a big list. The more ships you have, the more opportunities for Ackbar to proc, to go off, and that's always a good thing. But Defiance is another really cool title for a big game, because when attacking a ship that has already activated, well, when you've got 7+ ships on each side, at 800 points, you're gonna have way more opportunities for Defiance to trigger as well. So I thought that's a fun title for this larger point game. Since we have the 4 red on the sides, I gave it enhanced armament to make it 5 red, and then Ackbar will bring it up to 7. Give us leading shots, so if we're in blue die range, we'll get lots of rerolls there. Reinforced blast doors, just so that we're changing it up, so we're not copying electronic countermeasures a little bit, and to save some points, because we went all the way up to 799. I also decided to give this ship reactive gunnery, so this way it can potentially salvo. And the thing is, I recognize that reactive gunnery does not work that well with Admiral Ackbar. The idea here and why I think it still works is because this is Defiance, and Defiance wants to go late. Well, Defiance probably wants to be the last ship to activate on your list, and so you might as well be salvoing before you lock out your ability to, fire from non-side arcs. You might as well salvo when you can. Thus, then when you activate, you don't have to worry, but you've already spent your salvo, and now you can declare Ackbar and shoot only out the sides. So I thought that that's a fun way to make that happen. I also wanted to have a Liberty in there, and I decided to make it the Liberty, since the Liberty was the first ship to get destroyed by the Death Star super laser at the Battle of Endor. So we have 3 MC-80s, which is definitely a lot of points. But we did see an awful lot of Mon Calamari ships at the Battle of Endor. So we're going to run the Liberty. Of course, if we have spent a squadron token, we can activate an additional squadron. So we're going to run Ramus on here so we can reveal a squadron command. Then, of course, get the free token, and so we can activate 4 squadrons with this. Now, we are going to run a lot of squadrons also, and I wanted to make sure that I had some really good squadron capability, and the Liberty's always been one of those titles that I never want to use, because I'm like, this is not a ship that I really want to be activating squadrons. It's not, it's a Squadron 2 ship. I don't want to use this. It doesn't have offensive retrofit. Like, I just don't want this to be a carrier. But since I'm doing thematics this time, why not? Let's go ahead and make it be carrier. That's still pretty cool. So that's what we got, and I give it flight controllers just to make it more of a dedicated carrier. It's not with this configuration, it's not a bad carrier, but it happens to also have great dice. And since an MC-80 Liberty style doesn't really synergize perfectly with an Ackbar fleet, I figured, let's focus it on what it can do, and it's gonna be carrying. And then of course we can Ackbar, or we can not. Again, not every ship has to declare Ackbar, right? A lot of ships can just say, I'm gonna do my normal shot, and so it's got great options. If it needs to shoot out the sides, it can still get a really nice dice pool out of the sides. But if somebody wants to come out, to its front, it's going to have tremendous dice pool in the front. But it's really there to be a carrier and to fit the theme. Speaking of carrier, we do have Yavaris here, who's going to be, again, we had Nebulon Bees in every battle, so of course they're thematic. We had to include at least one. I didn't want to do too many because they aren't the best with Ackbar. Although I do have my builds where I try to make Nebulons work with Ackbar. I didn't want this to be one of those type of videos. So I just put Yavaris in here again. Focus on being a carrier. The MC-80 and the Nebulon both don't synergize as well with Ackbar, and that's fine, but I wanted them to, because they're thematic, and I also wanted them to focus on something unrelated to their attack, so they're both carriers. And we put flight commanders on them, so this Yavaris can kind of stay a little farther back and has the flexibility to hit the squadrons after it moves and gets in range. We do have 4 thematics. We have 2 CR90As. And one of them is going to be a TRC90A, a true, a true hero of the dice manipulation here. And I gave the other one quad battery turrets, just so it has an extra die. I wanted them to be a little bit different. A lot of times I like to put enhanced armament on a CR90A in the early days of running Ackbar builds, because then you'd have 2 red in the sides. So now all of a sudden you're running 4 or even 5 if you have a concentrate fire. And hey, a 5 red die attack out of a CR90 out of a 44 point ship is beautiful, but I guess it'd be 54 if you had enhanced armament on it. But I wanted to give it quad battery turrets instead, so this just affects every attack, whether or not it's an Ackbar attack or a front and front, or so. Basically, I can get 2 dice out of quad battery turrets. Now, this is a ship that'll probably be going really, really fast, but hopefully I can slow it down. And this is the one that will want to get into the fight and then slow down very quickly, whereas the CR90A will want to go a little bit faster here with the turbo laser reroute circuits. We have 2 GR75s in this build, so we're running 2 flotillas. One, of course, with Bomber Command, because we are going to be running squadrons, and then the other will have CommsNet to help support the fleet. And that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 ships, so pretty high activation count, but I would say fairly standard for an 800-point build. Now, moving down to squadrons, we're staying a little bit thematic. A few liberties taken here. I decided to put Hera in an X-Wing, and this is something that I don't believe Hera flew an X-Wing at the Battle of Endor. But again, why not? Let's just see. She was there. Maybe the Ghost was in maintenance, and Hera decided, you know what, I'm gonna do this battle. but I'm going to be in an X-wing, and that's why you didn't see the ghost at the Battle of Endor, because Hera was in an X-wing the whole time. So that's a little bit of my liberty. Plus, she's new from Rapid Reinforcements, so I decided I would go ahead and put her there. She makes X-wings a lot better. And of course, that is going to be awesome. She's going to help Wedge, giving Wedge Adapt to 1, which is also really cool. Of course, and I put Lando in the Falcon because, of course, Lando should be there. Lando in the Falcon. That's absolutely something we should do. We have Wedge there. He's going to help try to take out enemy squadrons. Hera is just awesome in all things. And those are I'm only running 3 aces in this one. I am going to run 3 more X-wings, 2 Y-wings, 2 A-wings, and 2 B-wings. So not quite as many squadrons. But let's see, what is this? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we actually have less squadrons than the Empire does in this build, but which is thematically appropriate, I think. But still, about the same amount of points. Because we do have some expensive aces. Lando, for example, 23 points. So we do have a lot more points because we don't have all those cheap TIE fighters. So in theory, these X-wings, especially with if they have Adept and if I can keep them all together, are going to make real short work. They're going to be like one-shotting TIE fighters and TIE interceptors. So we're going to be able to hopefully do a really good job. So this is the 2 lists. Hopefully you guys like it. Of course, if you're running 800-point lists, they may look very different than this. But sometimes it's fun to just build something that's thematic and not necessarily trying to be too competitive, especially when you're running higher point games. Again, a lot of these ships are very light on upgrades. I think that's an important thing if you're playing big games. You gotta have a lot of ships, a lot of ship cards, a lot of upgrade cards on the table, and either run ships with light upgrades or run ships with maybe all of the same upgrades. Maybe if you want to run a couple of CR90s, maybe run 4 and then make them all turbo laser reroute circuits. Maybe if you're going to run MC80s or maybe Liberties, give them like all gunnery team spinal armament or something like that, to make them make it easier for you to remember your upgrade cards, especially if you're a newer player or if you're old and senile and losing your mind like I tend to do. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you all so much. And again, thanks to Patreon for suggesting this particular build. It's always fun to get some of that fun stuff going on. So thank you guys for your continued support, and I will talk to you guys later. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank everybody for continuing to support the channel. You guys are amazing. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper, and always wash your toes and party on.